Welcome everybody to today's Member Forum meeting. Some safety information first. I'd like to draw your attention to the emergency evacuation procedure, which is to please exit the building at the nearest exit and gather at the cathedral. Full details of the questions submitted to Member Forum and the Mayor's written replies were published on the Council's website. Groups have submitted their questions in priority order and are presented rotating around the party groups. Each councillor has asked a maximum of 2 questions about one topic, or 2 separate questions about 2 different topics. Councillors have a maximum of 2 supplementary questions. If a councillor asks 1 question, they have 1 supplementary. If a councillor asks 2 questions, they can ask 1 supplementary per question asked. Thank you. So, the first question is, I'd like to invite Councillor Pearce, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to thank the Mayor for his response. I was really disappointed. Are you asking a supplementary? I'm asking a supplementary, yeah. I was disappointed when this incident happened, because I'd hoped councillors would acknowledge that disregarding our safety measures have safety risks for both councillors, our staff, our guests. And as part of this organisation, we have a duty of care. The further...
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to urge you to get to the question quite quickly because we have a lot of questions today.
Yes.
It's your supplementary. You've had your question and your answer.
Yes, and my supplementary is that as councillors, we have to consider our own safety and the safety of colleagues to a considerable degree. And I personally have fielded a number of issues from constituents who have thought it entirely appropriate to harangue, use bullying and misogynistic language to both council colleagues and parliamentarians. So any behaviour that kind of acknowledges that this is all right, or, as has been written to me, should be expected as part of public discourse and discourse between public and members, is a concern. And when at a time when I'm dealing with colleagues' safety around... I'll be getting there in a minute. We're talking about our safety here.
It is an important topic, and actually it doesn't really help. It doesn't really help if other members step in. I mean, I think I'm quite capable of stepping in. I do think that we need to remind ourselves that we have members' questions, and supplementary questions come out of the reply. So I'm asking you now, Councillor Pearce, have you got a supplementary question related to the reply to your question? And in a question form, please.
Do we think we could do more using the appropriate legislation to protect ourselves and one another?
Well, I will say, just last week I chaired a meeting of core city leaders, having seen that a meeting in another core city was stormed, as it were, to put the self-aggrandizing phrase on it, and shut down. And the leader of that authority was then subsequently sent a severed doll's head after that. And in fact, it was the same organisation. So I think that making sure that we are careful, any elected member, when they chase quick popularity, is very careful, is important. And it's important also that they know that when they do start to I would say, play games, actually, with security, that it is not just the councillors who are threatened. We have staff on the front desk whose responsibility it is to keep this building safe, you were then put into very compromising situations. I don't know if it was a rogue member of the party that did it or whether it was an agreed action by the party, but either way it is more akin to January the 6th than it is to the kind of thoughtful, reflective democracy that people profess to be wanting in this organisation and in this city.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Pearce, you had a second question. Do you have a supplementary for that?
Yes. Objections to Romney House is a clear example of putting politics before the needs of the city. A council-owned development on brown field that's won sustainability and affordability awards was objected to, maybe out of spite that it was Labour that set up Gorham and restarted the council.
Councillor Pearce, I am going to ask you just, you can't be reading out your questions again and just reiterating what's already there and published, and you've got the answers for it. The idea for this is a supplementary question which comes out of the answer. Please.
Do you have any suggestions about how we can ensure that politicking won't get in the way of Bristol's efforts to address the housing and environmental crises?
I have no way of ensuring that, really. I think the best thing we can do is to try and make sure that we're all dealing with the same raw material in Bristol as much as possible, recognising that we have a housing crisis, we have a growing population, and we're not getting any more land, and to do our best to move, improve the quality of debate in the city to a recognition that there are no cost-free solutions. This is a complex world in which every solution we put on the table has a price to be paid. And the closer we get to tipping point, be it on social crisis or environmental crisis, the higher that price is likely to be. And anyone who wants to step into a leadership position must begin to prepare themselves for the reality that it will not just be soundbite Twitter popular positions that they will be occupying in the future. It will be making decisions sometimes between undesirable options. But in this case, this was a very desirable option with an award-winning housing scheme. No reason to oppose it other than politics, unfortunately.
Thank you, Marys. Thank you, Marys. Second question is from Councillor Wilcox. Councillor Wilcox, have you got supplementary questions?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, I do have a supplementary question. Out of the 56 road traffic signals that are more than 25 years old, how many of them will be replaced in the next 5 years, please?
That's not something I've been agonising over, but I'm sure we'll be able to get you a number within the next week or so. I'll ask.
Thank you, Mayor Rees.
Do you have a supplementary to your second question?
Yes, I do. I'm sorry that there's an amount of confusion about how many office blocks that the council is going to be leasing, because when it was presented to GNR it was 2, but if it's now 1, that's all well and good. But can I actually have some figures about occupancy projection, please, like I've asked for in my question?
Yeah, it is important because often these kind of statements somehow find their way into the public domain, and before you know it, the difference between having 1 office block and 2 office blocks is actually quite considerable. So it is important that we're accurate, particularly if we're going to go public on these kinds of positions. I've got a list of numbers in front of me. I could read them out. I'm sure it wouldn't be great. Why don't we send you, a list of numbers, about the strength of office occupancy within Bristol. One thing that, again, this is a piece of work across core cities, actually, that we have been dealing with is there's a lot of easy assumption and early conclusions off the back of COVID that suggesting that city centres are not surviving and are dying. What they are doing is changing. And it's not straightforward to say that people are moving out as well. Sometimes people are buying second homes. That's certainly what we've seen in London. And certainly our office occupancy and the desire to have offices in Bristol with our proximity to London, the strength of London decampment to Bristol is very strong. So there are some general trends we have to be very careful about not lazily falling into. I'm not saying you're lazy, I'm just saying that they can be lazily taken up. But then we have to look at the unique aspects of each office market as well. And our office market is very strong, and we can share some of these numbers to you. I'll add to that just, again, as I raised at the top, the growth of our city and our city region. When I was elected, Bristol was 460,000 people. As of the census results of the day, we're 472. We'll be 550,000 by the middle of this century. That's in just 28 years. So we're also a growing city that's incredibly attractive to business, and we think Temple Quarter is going to be an incredibly important area for our city and a thriving development of our city centre.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like now to ask Councillor Goulandris to ask, do you have supplementary questions?
I do indeed, Lord Mayor. Marvin, thank you for the answers, as always. As supplementary to question 1, as you say in your answer, the police have been given sweeping new powers, and deliberate trespass is now a criminal offence. So just as you'd ring the police if you're being burgled, so too unlawful traveller encampments should now be a matter for the police. My specific question is this. Given the potential cost savings to the council in not having to apply to the courts for eviction and following the civil process, would it not make sense to bring forward the review of the current council police protocol to sooner than the end of March 2023?
I could look, but again, in the context of the considerable organisational challenges we face right now, not least around our, the financial context we find ourselves in, there's a lot of internal management energy and resource being directed towards making sure that we, as an organisation, is as strong a place as possible. So I would, current challenges aside, I would say yes, but that would mean a kind of a more of a call on Mike and team's resources that I think are best directed towards our financial position, at this moment in time. So it's a reasonable request, but that's the judgment. I would say, John, by the way, that we'll talk to the PCC, but feel free to also talk to the PCC. It is an elected position. It is democratically accountable, and they are responsible for prioritising the use of police resources. So I'm going to say this to a colleague of yours later. It's not just about me advocating to the PCC. All councillors can also go to the PCC and make the case for the interests, of their wards. I'm sure you know him, but if not, I can make an intro.
Thank you, Mayor. John, do you have a second?
I do have a second supplementary, and I think Marvin must have read my mind with the second supplementary, because it does follow that theme a little bit. And we certainly will talk to the Police and Crime Commissioner ourselves. But the second supplementary is, as you say, these are very much police powers that have been introduced. So have the GRT team met with the Police and Crime Commissioner to seek his support in ensuring the police use their new powers promptly for Bristol when asked? And if not, would it not be a good idea to do so?
So I'll fold back on my last answer and come forward. I don't know if they have. Because it is such a hot issue, I would imagine they've at least talked to frontline officers, about managing public space. I can find out what they've done with the diary. But again, let's not just rely on the GRT team. Let's approach the PCC ourselves. It is a politically accountable public position that should not be distant from the people of Bristol. It has actually been a bit of a concern of mine, if I'm perfectly frank. The kind of apparent appointment of a deputy for Bristol, when I actually made the point to the PCC that I don't want Bristol to be the result of deputy leadership. I want full PCC leadership in Bristol, and he kind of accepted that. But please, approach direct. And like I said, I'm happy to be in that conversation with you, or I'm happy to make an intro, but I'm sure you know him directly yourself as well.
Thank you. Councillor Kent, do you have supplementary questions?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, I have one supplementary. Thank you for your answer, Mr. Mayor, and desire to look at this issue in the future. So this is to question 1 about primary health care. Now, in our ward, we already have 1,000 new units that have been delivered. But the local doctors have a staffing crisis at the moment. We have over half the doctors on maternity leave. Now, they've been employing additional locums, but that money has run out. So I guess our question is, could you aid us in our conversations with the Integrated Care Board about trying to identify emergency funding for our local doctors? Because at the moment they may have to reduce down primary healthcare provision in our area, so they already cannot meet that because the funding has run out. Any help you could give on that would be greatly appreciated. I have contacted them direct, but they've told me it may take them up to 35 days to reply to my email. Thank you.
Again, sure, happy to help, whatever that means. What I would say is we have a health and wellbeing board as well. We have a number of forums I've listed in the written answer to your question that you'd be welcome to introduce yourselves to make sure that you're part of that conversation. We have the health and wellbeing board, as I mentioned. We have the integrated care boards and and so forth, which are those places that actually through the LGA, we've worked really hard to make sure that local government is not excluded. There was a danger that the new health structures that were being introduced were going to really minimise the role of local authorities in general and councillors in particular. And Councillor Foggerhill, I think it was actually, has been on the forefront of that with the LGA's Health and Wellbeing Board, which is another forum through which you can make representation as well. It doesn't have to go through me. There's absolute openness to agency to do that. I'm glad you've reached out to them directly as well. The status of the board meetings, I'm sure you can get yourself on the agenda, send in statements, write to leaders of the health service as well, not just the integrated care system itself, but write to the trusts as well, and just make the case that you want them at those meetings, raising the issue of, as we move post-haste, as we must do to meet our housing crisis, that the health service is working lockstep with us to make sure that the resources are coming along at the same time. Because we cannot have any, and this is not a challenge to the health service because they've got their own challenges, but we don't want to hold back the health service, and we can't have the health service holding back us as we meet city challenges. But I think that you'll find all those partners' doors are open, administration, time allowing.
Thank you. Next questions are from Councillor Hopkins. Do you have supplementaries?
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. The decision to allocate some funds to local areas and local parks was part of the Parks and Green Spaces strategy of 2008, agreed by this council and others. Basically, the Parks and Green Spaces strategy is still in place, as has been confirmed by officers. This is not something from the dim and distant past, because your administration actually responded to questions about this following the Bundred freezing of funds. And we have a position where we have an existing body, the Area Committee, who can administer this. So why do you claim that the decision and the promise is nil and void?
As much as I can kind of understand what's going on here, Gary, maybe I should say Councillor Hopkins, or whatever. Trawling back through this, does this go back to 2010?
The original Parks and Green Spaces strategy, which allocated funds
in 2010,
was originally brought forward in 2008.
2008. So listen, let me put a bit of a challenge. I was seconded into Bristol City Council to be director of the LSP in 2009. You were deputy leader at that time. And I think you were then deputy leader up to 2012. So you made a decision, and in the 3 years, well, actually, if it was 2008, in the 4 years after making that decision, you didn't land it. There were clearly would have been no plans, no implementation. So, look, I mean, I can only say one is that strikes me as being less than good performance to have not done the deal, or maybe the deal was described in more flamboyant and victorious language than it actually deserved because things evaporated. So to have been in power when the decision was made, not to have landed it, and then waited till 2022, 10 years after you lost power, to blame the administration of the time, strikes me as a little bit challenging.
Do you have a second supplementary?
Well, I'm not blaming any previous administration. They all acted properly. and basically an agreement was made, a promise made on behalf of this council. I can produce emails going back for many years through different administrations to show that this was not allowed to lapse. All of a sudden, though, you have decided that a promise made can be wiped away because it's not convenient to you. How do you think that any councillor or park group or local or the Parks Forum for that matter will trust the new Parks and Green Spaces strategy that you're seeking to introduce if you just rip up agreements because they were made a long time ago?
Well, it's the usual kind of flamboyant language, and I mean, I just reflected, you know, I get a bit of reflection resulting from how long I think I've known you for like nearly 18 years now, you know, make hope possible rather than despair convincing. But anyway, life advice aside, that it's not ripping out things up. 2008 was a very different world, and remember, if it was 2008, you had 4 years to sort it out, and clearly you didn't sort it out, even as deputy leader of the council. And dare I say, when I was working under your leadership, you had considerable power and influence. You also chaired OSM at the same time as being deputy leader. Your party had all those positions and a majority here as well. So you didn't get it done. So as I said, to turn up 10 years after you actually lost power, to blame or to try and, you know, blame me, it strikes me as really poor. What's also happened here, by the way, is the world has moved on. You went into coalition. We had 10 years of austerity. We faced considerable financial challenges. We have the mess we have now. We've gone through Brexit, a pandemic. We're now in a cost of living crisis. You know, you don't fix plans, you know, in concrete one day and say, come what may, that's it. You know, we as an organisation work with people, and the relationships we build with people is a relationship in which we look at the context in which we our work and the challenges we face, and we make our plans accordingly. And in the written answer you've seen, we've put considerable money into the parks in the face of the financial challenges we face. That's how you maintain trust. There are some people in politics in the Bristol and some commentators who are in the business of sowing mistrust and despair. That's their decision. But our approach to Bristol has been trying to build houses, make sure people are fed, and try and get more people involved in the democratic process.
I think the question's answered. Thank you. I don't think Councillor Breckles is here, so we go straight to Councillor Stone. Do you have supplementaries?
Hi, thanks very much, Lord Mayor, and thank you very much for your reply, Mayor Rees. I'm actually quite surprised because you're saying that the debate's moved on. Well, to be honest with you, if the debate had moved on, then they wouldn't be conducting surveys within the local area for an RPZ. So residents across Tottenham and Wimmer Hill have constantly and continuously called for an RPZ. And we have to remember that this debate can't move on because at the end of the day, we did provide provision and funding in the budget in February 2022 to provide RPZ schemes across the city and start to roll them out, which you supported in
Councillor
that
Stone,
statement.
I am going to press you for a question
Well,
as well.
this is actually, you know, this is from his reply. This is not the question. This comes out of his reply. We have to remember that you went on to say that obviously, you know, RPZs is this in your reply, do not actually create a modal shift. Unfortunately, there's much evidence to suggest that actually RPZ are very much proactive in that modal shift, and without them, we can't actually create renewable neighbourhood, livable neighbourhoods, etc., and active travel. Therefore, right. So the question is that does this survey demonstrate overwhelming support or not? And on what grounds would you consider it an RPZ? And if there is evidence for the statement that RPZs increase car ownership and do not support modal shift, then please make that evidence available.
I think we have to say that the audio is a little bit challenging to hear everything that you said. For some reason, it's just not great. But essentially, I think you got the question.
I think so, yeah. I mean, I'm going to raise this. I've just raised this earlier on about the approach to housing, but here too. So, I saw some of the statements in the survey you took on, and what it was about was how inconvenient it is to have a car. And again, this is another situation in which I can't quite work out the position of your party. Over the last number of years, I've been lobbied like ferociously, which is all about making car ownership as inconvenient as possible. And then you bring me a piece of work, and amongst the things that you listed, which are negatives, are how car ownership is becoming inconvenient. So
Can I just say something? I know, but honestly, if you read the survey, that survey was conducted not by myself, but by the local residents. I'm just the leader, the council, the community leader here.
I think we're mixing up the idea of leadership. What you're saying is you're just the conveyor of the message. But that's not leadership. That's just conveying a message. Right? Leadership
he's asked me a direct question.
I'm not going to allow
he's
this
asked
to
me a
break
direct
down
question.
into a debate. We've got supplementary questions. So you've had one question. I'm going to give you another question. You feel you have a question to answer?
No, I mean, I'm just saying, well, in terms of what the response to this is, as we've said, the board is moving on.
Yeah.
And actually, the approach to how we build a livable city is not just about how we...
Can I interrupt? Because I'm the chair. So if I can paraphrase, what Councillor Stone has asked is that she's given you the evidence and you said that the world has moved on, and her residents are saying they've still got a problem with it, and the survey is evidence of that. And I think your supplementary question was, if this isn't good enough support and evidence of it, what would it take? That's the question.
Well, what it takes is in a bit of honest reflection and development of thought, rather than chasing cheap popularity, in challenging people to say, actually, this is a different kind of city, a growing city, and the solutions that we have to pursue are not the solutions that perhaps were relevant in 2014. But I do have that pushback challenge, which anyone in that party who wishes to reflect on it, in your quiet times, are that we get a lobby constantly on, whether it be tweeted, and I'm not on Twitter very much anymore, but whether people are tweeting, Facebooking, putting out into the press, which is around a real hostility to cars and making life as inconvenient as possible for car drivers. And then when things happen in your ward that inconvenience car drivers, even down to parking, suddenly it becomes a negative. And I'm just saying, can we have some consistency?
I think the answer is not about the cars at this point. The answer that we need is about what is evidence. Lisa, can you just... Thank you. What I think we should take out of this is that there is a question here about consultation. The city, needs to consult. If what you're doing is some sort of consultation, then I think maybe the next question you need to take this on from there is what you want. What you're not getting your answer that you want is to what does consultation look like? What does the survey do? And what more could you do? I think this question has come here quite a lot of times. I think that is what she did ask. Well, I'm not being helpful. I am actually interpreting. I'm not putting words in her mouth. I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth. And we're ending this one now.
I do have a second supplementary.
I don't think you have now. I think I don't think so. Councillor Hartley isn't here. And Councillor Davies. Is Councillor Davies here? No. So we're on to Councillor Goodman. Do we have Councillor Goodman?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, sorry.
Hello.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Councillor Weston, I've missed you. I'm so sorry. How remiss of me.
Thank you very much, my
And I'm not going to
man.
put words in your mouth.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I do have supplementaries. In response to question 1, for the Mayor's information, I did actually attend WECA, so I raised this directly with Dan Norris. I also attended Growth and Regen, so I raised it directly with officers. And since this is now the council meeting where I get direct access to you, I'm raising it with you. So I'm trying to cover the board. My question is on this. When it comes to the Henbury Station, it's going to planning in early 2023. The business case is then 2024 and construction is then 2025. Now, that to me is a year gap at every single stage of the process, and yet this has been planned for years. My plea to the Mayor is, would you please work with the authorities, Network Rail, at trying to condense those spaces? And so it's a direct plea for you to do that, which leads directly to the second supplementary. The Brabazon Arena is opening in 2024. A major part of its travel and traffic plan was to have train stations open in 2024. This is arena that you put there. If those train stations aren't open, you have gridlock in North Bristol. So the second supplementary is, what conversations are you having with YTL about updating their traffic plans, because the train stations are not going to be there? Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you. So I'll try and keep track of that. And just for the record, it was me that remembered it was your question this time. I'm looking out for your interest, Mark Weston. First off, of course, in terms of working with the Combined Authority, you know, even the last meeting, you must have been at one that I wasn't. I have missed a couple, so I'm sure you were there. We constantly drive delivery, and even in the meetings that are not including the Combined Authority, myself and Toby, Councillor Toby Savage, we meet once a month with our chief execs. And we go through the list of deliverables we want to see, and we look at how we broker the cross-border relationships and deals to make sure that we get these things done when we go to Combined Authority. So that's, and you'll know because we've done that with the bus lane, station road, and so forth. And that I just talked to Toby about that just on Friday. So we are constantly driving on delivery. We all want that delivery to happen. Secondly, on train stations on YTL, the conversations with YTL are constant. With our team. But I would say, while we've had a very good working relationship across, we also know that there are challenges working with rail network. So this isn't unusual. But having said that, I don't want, and I can see what people are trying to do some stirring. We have had a very good relationship over Temple Meads in the build up to this, and good cooperation. But sometimes there are challenges that are beyond any single organisation that need to be overcome. We do face another major challenge at the moment, by the way, in terms of delivering any infrastructure, and that's the state of the national economy. And this is not a party political point, but I'm sure it wouldn't have escaped your attention that things have not gone as smoothly as we would normally like. No, they have not. And there are very, very real-world consequences for political instability, rising interest rates, and a loss of market confidence in the government. And those play themselves out in our ability to deliver at the local level in those timelines. So we are all looking at that context at the moment, driving as quick as we can, but working with the world the way it is, rather than the way we'd like it to be.
Thank you. I'm going to now move to Councillor Goodman, recognising that Councillor Breckles is here, and I will come back to your question afterwards.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Obviously, it's been difficult to formulate a follow-up question given the chaos the Conservative government has generated and its revolving door of chancellors and multiple U-turns. Despite the Chancellor U-turning on most of the unfunded tax cuts, there's still a gap of billions of pounds in their so-called finance. I'm moving to a question. Throughout the past decade, Tory governments have cut local government funding to the bone, depriving local people of many things that are important for quality of life. But it seems they're likely to cut it further and threaten councils' abilities to deliver vital statutory services. When lobbying a weak Conservative government for change, Conservative politicians' voices are heard much louder by the government than Labour ones. Considering
Lord
South
Mayor,
Gloucestershire's...
Are you going to permit members to make statements which just wholly get standing orders? They should actually pose supplementary questions. That's all.
Okay, Councillor Eddy. What I was actually doing there, Councillor Eddy, was I was being a little bit empathetic and slightly generous with a councillor who I haven't noticed has spoken as many times as you have in the chamber. So I was an element of largesse, which I'm sure you would agree is something that's quite good in local democracy. Thank you. I will urge you to get to your question.
Yeah, thank you. Considering South Gloucestershire finances and other Tory governments are running a proportionally larger deficit.
I'm not going to let you read the rest of the whole statement. You have to get to your question now.
Have you heard from any Tory authorities calling for fair funding for local authorities?
Not directly, but what I will say is that at the LGA, we are working out how we can collectively challenge government and make the case that the financial consequences of the mismanagement are not rolled downhill onto the shoulders of local government. And local government is the easy target too often, right? I'm not saying the NHS has it easy, Tim has talked about the challenges facing the NHS today, and those are real and raw. But there is a degree of political protection of the NHS that is not afforded to local government, even though so many of our services are actually at point of crisis in people's lives. And the points we'll be making include the fact that that just at the time when our population's needs are going up and our revenues are going down, now's not the time to disinvest in local government. And there needs to be a recognition too that local government is not just a collection of services, which I think sometimes national governments and the civil service kind of see us as. We are a delivery arm of national government services. Actually, local government has a role of convener, placemaker, trade maker. We have our twinning. We're an avenue for soft power, within on the world stage too. None of that happens without people being paid. So we are trying to make that case that we don't become the soft target, for government. We will do that more energetically with our Labour colleagues than I think we'll possibly be able to get through those forums in which we share party. But nonetheless, behind closed doors, lots of people of all political persuasions are exasperated by what's happening.
Thank you, Mayor. Next question is for Councillor Plowden, please. Do you have supplementaries?
Yes. Basically, when the workplace parking levy report was debated in this chamber, your Transport Cabinet member argued that this was such an important decision that the report needed to be made public, and amended the Green Party motion and committed to publishing it when it was finished and bringing back a report to full council. Now, we're quite used to you not listening to Cabinet, to full council motions, but why aren't you publishing this when it was your own administration that said this was in the public interest, but that this should be available and to be looked at properly?
I think this is a case of making sure you've actually, read the detail rather than look for controversy. The ICO, as the answer has shared with you, has agreed the report is published as part of the Cabinet process, just like other reports. I've seen no reason to change that, but, as we said in our answer, you're perfectly at liberty to take it up with the PCP.
Yes, well, in your submission to the ICO said it was not in the public interest for this to be in the public domain, but that's entirely opposite to the line that your Cabinet member took in the council chamber here. So I guess my follow-up question is, when you were elected, you committed to making the council mayoral system more transparent and accountable. What went wrong?
I don't think that question is worthy. It's just political posturing question as usual, Ed. And if we had someone in you who had 20 odd years in the council staff, working for solutions for the city that were few and far between, if you come with a kind of collaborative spirit that wanted to get stuff done, then we'd work with you. As I said, the ICO has agreed with us that the report will be published as part of the Cabinet process, and that's what we do. That's what we'll do.
Thank you.
It's exactly that collaboration I would like to be able to exercise by looking at the report.
Councillor Eddy. Nice. Thank you.
Whilst I'm perfectly happy to ask my questions, not statements, Lord Mayor, in view of your confidence in my unfailing good nature, I believe you said you were going to call Councillor Breckles first.
Well, I didn't. Actually, I said I'd come back to Councillor Breckles at some stage. But since are you standing aside then? We'll go to Councillor Breckles.
Thank you. Have we got my question up on the screen, please? Just so my supplementaries make sense. Yeah, it was. Labour question. Yeah. Okay. On the first one, yeah, I do have a The committee system will undoubtedly vastly increase councillors' workloads. The increased workload could mean members have to choose between being a councillor and their full or even part-time jobs as a councillor's allowance that, since Eric Pickles doesn't come with a pension anymore, for many isn't enough to live on. The people who have had who will have the time and the money to be able to be a councillor full-time will be the wealthy or the retired. Given the diversity of the current administration and this chamber, that would be a huge backward step. Do you think this is a problem, and what can be done to ensure the council remains representative of our diverse city going forward?
Thanks for the question, but I think that's going to be a question for the people who advocate for the system and the committee that's organising the committee system.
Thank you. Thank you. Excellent. Okay, back to you now, Councillor Eddy.
Mayoral question, answer 1. I see the mayor as like Lewis Carroll's Humpty Dumpty, for whom, and I quote, words mean what I choose them to mean, neither more nor less. I repeat, why did he U-turn?
Well,
are you clear what the U-turn refers to?
I mean that's a interesting play on words as well. I mean, again, we're looking at the options in front of us, and that's what a responsible organisation will do. I must admit, though, I am quite intrigued. I thought your carefully cultivated image, Councillor Eddy, was that of a conservative free marketeer, and yet you seem to be advocating for bigger local government.
Second supplementary.
Second supplementary, although interestingly, a former Labour councillor remarked to me, he said, Richard, you know there are no more working class Tory councillors than in Labour, which perhaps says something about the mayor's links with the trade unions. My question is... Was
that the question, Councillor Eddy? Did he know that?
No, it's not a question. Can he supply me with the business case figures? After all, the proposed reduction he mentions of 20% could be £20 off, for example, £100. So can I have the business case figures, please?
I'm sure we can provide you with whatever business case figures you like. I'll get the team onto it straight off the back of this meeting.
Thank you. Can I now go to Councillor Classic, please? You have one question and one supplementary.
No supplementaries.
Thank you, Councillor Classic. So we now move on to Councillor Rippington. Do you have supplementaries?
Yes, I do. Thank you. On question 1, yes, thank you, Mayor, for your response. The cuts to the 36 are already having a major impact on many of our residents, but just to bring up your last point in the answer, we've also lost the use of infrastructure that we paid quite a lot of money for, because First have decided not to route the bus to those bus stops. So that's very disappointing. But my question is, as I mentioned, its recent conference, the Labour Party confirmed to support municipal ownership of bus companies, and with the current government in terminal decline, it looks very likely that Labour could form the next government. The Mayor has previously expressed his support for taking back control of our buses. Could he spell out what he sees as a possible roadmap for doing this?
It's resources. This is the conversation, and I was chatting to Andy Burnham about this actually at City Lab just last week. But there is no magic pill, there is no magic bullet in the form of ownership. There is no substitute for money. Right? Fundamentally, buses have to be maintained, fuel, drivers have to be paid, and there has to be a whole administration around it to make them function. And where routes are not popular routes, profitable routes, those bills don't go down because they don't have large numbers of passengers. So the resources to make whatever form of ownership works is important. But also going through the process of setting up a company also takes considerable resources. We know, as an authority now. But what I would say is I do think that public transport is a public good. It's a common good. I think like health and education, this needs to be something that's in the power of government to deploy for the good of economic inclusion, to break down social isolation as a health intervention, and to keep a company, an area function. I don't think it's best served in the market. So I would advocate, with adequate resource, for it to be brought into public ownership.
Thank you. Do you have a second supplementary, Tim?
Yes, I do, thanks. Yeah, I'm relieved that welcoming spaces are now opening up across Bristol, including in Brislington East at St Anne's House. They will be a lifeline for many. Would the Mayor be able to provide... I'm very concerned in relation to St Anne's House, however, that the first bus cuts to the service have left many people with difficulty, to say the least, accessing that local welcome space. Would the Mayor be able to provide details on whether there's any possibility of First Bus or other providers coordinating travel to welcoming spaces?
So, one is, I'll say a number of things here. We could ask, all right? You can ask, direct, as a councillor. But remember as well, buses are with the combined authority, so we need to be in appropriate forums as well. So I'm happy to be, and I will play that role, and I'll serve that role. The voice that goes to the combined authority. But the point is, if we want to move, and this is not to you, by the way, but if we want to move to this, people saying they've got voices, there are many, many channels for councillors to have their voices heard. Unfortunately, we are not getting great turnouts at those forums, as I shared at last Cabinet. But come to the combined authority, raise this point. I will say on the welcoming spaces, that early doors, we did identify the challenge of transport to and from those welcoming spaces. So if you think of, 8:30 on a late November night, wet, cold, mother, 2 children, alone, getting home, right? There's a safety issue there. We've talked about this with the police, and part of what some of those welcoming spaces have looked at is how they can provide transport after the fact, as well. It is something that's being taken seriously. I will say, though, that the scale of the challenge facing us right now is one that we are planning for, but are also having to remain very open to adapting to as it lands on us with finite resource. So we recognise the challenge. But thanks for your question. Let's have a chat after, and let's talk about approaching first and seeing what adaptability is, and then let's talk to combined authority.
Just try to get through as many of the questions as possible. We've still got quite a lot here. Councillor Fodor.
Thanks very much, Lord. Yes, thanks, Lord Mayor. Yes, I asked about constantly on digital billboards and tubs. In your reply, you said there's no conflict about them, and you said you have no role in local planning because the local plan working group deals with planning policy, which is what I asked about. Now, you've had some quite substantial impacts on planning policy by making high-profile speeches on high buildings and on things like Brislington Meadow development. Are you willing to make a high-profile speech commenting on the adverse sustainability, welfare, mental health impact of digital billboards across the city?
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just going to pick something up here because, again, one of the, and I don't want to, I mentioned all parties, but one of the claims of your party over the years has been to do politics differently. You're not like all those other rubbish politicians who spend all their time fighting and, throwing lobbing bombs at each other. You do a new kind of politics. And I will say that the language you use is some of the most adversarial language. And even just beginning to introduce the terms conflict into this, what we have is people with different views. It's not like warfare. So it's really not helpful, and it's not in line with what you profess to be.
But honestly, I think,
No, I think
paraphrasing that question, what you've been asked is to say that you have made high profile. What I heard was, not putting any words into anybody's mouth, but what I heard was you've made high profile statements about tall buildings or whatever else. And the question is, are you prepared to make a statement about this?
And what I'm saying is, Lord Mayor, is I wanted to come back on that first point because the language around it was really incendiary. And we just, we've talked about the need to improve democracy with your citizens' assemblies and all that type of stuff, and yet we continually use this framework. Look, as I said, I'm leaving it to the planning, committee to shape that decision making. It's up to the councillors to make the decisions, under their own steam.
Okay. Second supplementary question, Councillor?
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. I think the Mayor is confused between planning decisions and planning policy that he has influenced. But in my second question, it is about a year since I pressed on the Resources Scrutiny Commission for carbon emissions to be built into the business plans of financial decisions. And he's asked me to bring forward ideas. I've done that for about a year now on resources scrutiny in the Finance Working Group. Will he help prioritise putting carbon decisions into business plans? Because it's been mentioned as an issue now, but it's not been tackled yet.
So, our officers are already planning to bring resources scrutiny a presentation on that pilot, around carbon, and hope you'll receive that favourably.
Oh, I look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next questions are from Councillor Hucker. Do we have supplementaries?
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. Thank you for your clear and detailed answer, Mayor Rees. I have no supplementary.
Thank you. Councillor Brown, you have 2 questions. Do you have supplementaries?
Thanks. No supplementaries for the first one, but I do have a supplementary on the second. I'd like to thank the Mayor for his geography lesson and his answer to me. But notwithstanding that, on behalf of the ward member who's unable to be here today and also local residents, can you advise whether when the bus gate is completed and the chocolate path is completed, whether Avon Crescent will be reopened?
I'm just as confused as to where you got that idea. We're not planning to reopen it. Is that something that you are hearing? Or are you just asking a question?
Well, it was a question.
Sorry?
It was a question, which
Okay.
from your response, I take it the answer is no.
Yeah, okay. Which set hairs running, I guess, with the question, but no.
No, I think the answer is no. The road's not going to open. Councillor Edwards, do you have supplementary questions?
Thank you for your answer that you provided. So my first supplementary was about the lack of consultation. So I understand that there was a letter to residents and councillors informing them that this was going to happen. But I saw an FOI that there was a meeting on the 30th of September 2021 where transport officers discussed the removal of the cycle lane with Councillor Alexander. And in the minutes it says that they expected pushback from the cycle lobby, that the changes might receive criticism and be contentious when it goes out to consultation. But then it doesn't appear that there was a consultation after that. So I'm just wondering why there wasn't a consultation.
Well, I can't account for your recounting of history because obviously you've done your bit of research, but 2,000 letters went out, 2 responses. Did you respond to that letter?
I didn't get it because I'm not in. It's not my ward.
Of the letter? Oh.
No. So it only went out to Ashley, Cottam. Sorry, I thought you asked me a question. I'm just replying. And Redland ward councillors. It didn't come up as far. My residents are upset because obviously it's their cycle corridor, but I didn't get the letter.
Okay. I mean, this is one where it's important if we're on an issue to be on top of the issue and know what's going on. 2,000 letters have gone out. Only 2 responses to that letter. And that's where we need people to be really engaging in council processes. And as I shared at Cabinet just last week, which is why it's important for councillors not only to claim to want to be more involved in the decision-making process in the council, but actually turn up at the forums when decisions are being made and be involved in the processes that lead to those decisions being made also.
Do you have a second supplementary?
Yes, I do. So actually, I'm just going to come back on that. Have you actually read the letter, Mayor?
Yeah, there's a second.
Because it was just saying there's going to be some traffic work. There wasn't actually any questions in that letter.
Okay, I haven't read that letter.
Okay.
I'm pausing because I really want to ask a question, and I'm not even sure if the Lord Mayor... They always say it's the Lord Mayor's meeting, and the Lord Mayor can ask any questions. I'm not sure that we could actually answer this question now, but I think it's an interesting one that I would like to know the answer to, and I'm happy to have this comment at a further date. When the 2,000 letters go out, because we've had this across the city where, you know, there's obviously a formula, 2,000 letters go out and you write to the police. And then if there's no answer, if there are only 2 responses, does that then affect the decision about the consultation? I think that's a genuine question. I don't know the answer to that. So if there was talk about having a consultation, then there are no responses, then is the consultation dropped? If that's our policy, I just think that that's an interesting question to ask. Don't really expect the answer now, but I think that is the question. Moving on now to, I always get this name, I'm so sorry, I never know that I have to pronounce it properly. Councillor Michelat? Thank. He's not here, okay. Councillor Y.
No, thank you very much for your answer. Just a couple of quick supplementaries for me. First of all, I note from the answer that the EQIA isn't able to tell me how many additional disabled journeys this might, reviewing disabled access to the CARES might create. And if it was thousands and thousands, I'd say we don't do it. But I think it's important we don't have that information. I also note that there's a part of the response says that it is unlikely that we will be able to extend the process. I have to say I wasn't suggesting we should extend the process, just re-look at the issue for this particular group of people. And I've just to urge us to, if it's unlikely, it sounds like we haven't asked the question. So just wondered if we could actually ask the question to the government about whether we could actually carry on with the CAS, but actually just think about disabled people, because we may have got it slightly wrong. So.
I just, yeah.
So are you asking us to take a measure that delays the date of compliance?
Sorry, say that again, Robin?
Are you suggesting we approach government to ask them to allow us to delay, to postpone the date of compliance?
Absolutely not.
Just a second. Can
Absolutely not.
Can I finish?
Well, I think, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm asking if we can...
No, you go on.
Okay. So yeah, this doesn't need to be, but if you're asking me to write to government to ask for a delay?
No, I'm asking you to see if we can carry on with the CAS but make a temporary exemption while we look into the issues that clearly haven't been covered in the EQIA about our disabled population.
So
can we do that without delaying the whole of the CAS is my question, I guess.
Well, you can't, because the more mitigations you put into the CAS, the less tight you make the CAS. And by definition, the less tight the CAS, the later the date of compliance. Again, this is you can't, and you have to at some point make decisions, and and you cannot delay without delaying. So you can't. You've got to make a decision here, Tim. And I'll just raise this again, because this is the same with your party's position on housing, which you support until they actually go in a real place. The RPZ, which you support until it inconveniences your people who park in your patch. We worked on the clean air zone for years, right? We constantly raised the issue about unintended consequences of the clean air zone, right? While we were doing that and trying to negotiate with government for the £42 million package to support people to transition, low-income people, vulnerable people, impact on businesses, impact on hospitals, not once did anyone from your party say, actually, it is the right thing to do to think about unintended consequences. All we had, and even recently, was you're delaying it, you're missing the deadlines, how can I get some Twitter points after this by saying they don't really care? Not once has anyone from your party ever come up and said, hold on, there could be some negative consequences for some people from this party. So to turn up after the fact and then start raising these issues, is a real, is a little bit rich, to be perfectly frank.
Mayor, can I just ask you to, I know we're running out of time. I know. Okay, fair enough.
So it's a bit of a challenge. Now, I'm happy to talk with you, and we'll talk with the disabled forum the commission that we set up, in the city, and we will talk about those mitigations, because that's what we're in the business of doing. But we're going to have to do this in a better spirit. than political opportunism.
I would just say that I think it was the word you were asking for a temporary.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, we've got an EQIA that doesn't give us the detail about how this impacts disabled people and the number of visits, the number of trips they're making. I'm asking for a temporary reprieve based on, what BDA.
I think the answer has to be given.
I welcome you talking about discussing it further, Marvin. That'd be fantastic.
But there's a practical reality to it. There's a practical reality to it. Any mitigation that reduces the number of cars impacted by the clean air zone will by definition.
But we have no idea how many cars this involves.
We are actually going to have to finish this whole debate because the time is up now. I am going to give the Mayor the final word on this.
All right. It's a public health intervention. Any clean air zone captures a certain number of cars. All right. Any mitigation that keeps some of those cars out of being impacted by the clean air zone will by definition delay, right, the date which we reach compliance. So any mitigation you ask for is fine, right? But you have to do one of two things. You have to either say, I'm prepared to live with the delay of the date of compliance, or you have to say, I will take these vehicles out and draw these vehicles in. And I would say too, your party was phenomenally gun-ho, even talking about a city-wide clean air zone, at one point. So, like I said, get with the spirit. If we're positive in the spirit and we have to approach it with some integrity, then we'll have that chat.
Thank you. That is the end of the members' session. We will be back at 5 o'clock for the main meeting. Thank you.